Picture this. A collection of stories, perfectly stitched together for you to indulge yourself. Every day for that matter, a sensory delicacy served to you at the same time, the same place until the end of time. Tune in to hear an array of folks, lined up, eager to share their narrations. So let's begin. Picture number 1. I once broke a little boy's phone, and biked away from the scene. One day, 4 years ago, I was biking on my neighborhood trails which connects 2 of the local parks together. I reach the end of the trail which empties into an athletic field where a group of 9 to 10-year-old boys were playing lacrosse. Biking on the side of the field, I felt a small bump on the grass and looked behind myself to see an iPhone X that had its screen separated by bicycle tire tracks and all its internals exposed. I look up and see one of the boys were coming towards my direction. I'm guessing because his water bottle was next to his phone and he needed a drink. Out of instinct, I bike away towards the main road as fast as I could, feeling no remorse for my actions at the time because I had a much worse phone. I only heard a faint, "Hey," coming from the field as I got away. To this day, I was never caught and never told this to anybody. On to picture number 2. When I was in primary school, I bit my own arm and blamed it on another kid. I was 5 years old in primary school, elementary for the us. There was another kid who basically went around biting people, for no reason. One time everyone was playing outside and it was starting to rain. Long story short, 2 of my friends that I was playing with got bitten by this kid and got to go inside with the teachers. They were crying and this kid was known to do this. As I was left by myself in the rain, I wanted to go inside too. So I went into a corner and bit my own arm so hard that teeth marks showed up. I ran inside after the others shouting, Look, he bit me too." I never gave up the story that he had also bitten me just for a few extra minutes inside. The kid got suspended for a few days. Signs pointing to picture number 3. I used to drop sharp objects on a busy road back when I was 9. This is my first post on this subreddit, so please excuse me if I break some rules. I started walking home on my own when I was 9. I used to walk past a kindergarten or preschool as some call it. There was a garden between the fence and the footpath that had sharp shells and other sharp objects like some stones that were pointy and a bit big. This garden was close to the road I used to have to cross, and so I picked up some stuff and sprinkled the road as I crossed. I don't know if I popped any tires. Here lies picture number 4. The time I ransacked a dead dude's house and took his bones. When I was like 8, I had gone out to my family's cabin out on this national resort with my cousins in attendance. To pass time, we went out exploring, finding the abandoned houses particularly amusing. We had gone through a few stealing shiny junk we thought was cool, watches, rings, chains. It was a grand time. We eventually got to this one house and got in by smashing the windows. When we got in, there was this foul and blank smell running throughout that 3-room cabin, and in being 3 rooms we quickly found the source. In the kitchen, below the bar, was the almost skeletal remains of someone. It had been picked at by animals through and through. One of my cousins took the femur, I think, another the skull, and I one of the arm bones. For keeps, that is. With the rest of the body we threw out into the desert as far as possible and kicked around. I've lost the bones since, and one of the 2 cousins were caught with and made to dispose of the skull. The other still has the femur. There was also this gross old beer on the counter from when the dude was still around, which we all took a sip out of. Blank thing I've ever had in my life, made me sick. The national park that the cabins were built on plowed down all the abandoned cabins like 2 years after this all went down. So rip to the geezer, but I don't think his death is on record. Strolling by is picture number 5. I took away a friendship band away from an introvert girl in grade 2. I was in grade 2. The girl, we'll call her S, was the most silent person ever. She was an amazing singer. She was in the local kids singing group. I always felt bad for her as she never talked to anyone. It was Friendship Day and everyone had their hands full with colorful bands. She didn't have any. I gave my special one to her and she was so happy. Another guy wanted my band, and he was ready to offer his metal bracelet for it. I loved that bracelet. So I asked S to give that back, then exchanged. I feel very bad, sad face. Moving on swiftly to picture number 6. I modified late-night fees at DVD store and kept the money. So, 19Y, me used to work at a DVD store. Did it for like 3 years. They used a free version software for their clients, movies, candy, etc. As some of you know, renting movies sometimes meant late-night fees. Whenever I was alone, most of the time, I modified the late fees and removed them completely out of the system. So let's say someone had $10 of late fees. They would pay the fee, but I then deleted the late-night fee entry from the client's account but kept the $10. I also did the same thing with hundreds of candies and popcorn. Did this for years, never got caught. Here comes picture number 7. I gave away thousands of dollars of pizzas at my time working at Dominos. Over my 2 years working at Dominos, I gave away a lot of blank I shouldn't have. We had these faulty EFT POS machines that didn't print receipts, so if I knew the person I delivered to, I would never charge them, and at the end of the night I would just say the receipt didn't print. They would order like $150 worth of blank, and every time I wouldn't charge them. I feel bad about this now, but at the time as a teenager giving free feeds to the boys was just funny and cool for them. Yay, no one knows this lol. Ladies and gentlemen, picture number 8. I broke a random person's windshield and dodged getting in trouble. My friends and I were playing badminton and for some reason I decided to shoot a pebble I found on the ground from my racket. I was like 12, so I didn't realize that it could possibly hit someone and injure them. So I throw the pebble in the air, and as the gravity was bringing it back, I shot it with my badminton racket, and seconds later, it lands on a random person's windshield, breaking it. I didn't realize it was because of what I did though, so we went to get the person whose car I tarnished, and as we were going to him, did it strike me that it happened due to me hitting the blanking pebble with my racket. The dude never found out who did it though, but I felt awful about it and still do. Setting up camp is picture number 9. I slammed into the landlord's office with car and got away with it. It was late one night and I was late dropping off the rent at my landlord's office building at like 2 a.m. My shoes were wet from rain and my foot slipped off the brake pedal and my car went into his office wall and annihilated it. Significant damage to the point of needing reconstruction to the whole structure, which is also connected to other tenants' housing. Probably $10,000 worth. Miraculously though, the guy had just bought the properties from the previous landlord who had it for decades and had not installed cameras or security of any sort yet. I got the blank out of there and by some miracle my car barely had a scratch on it. From what I hear, he wanted to murder the person who did it, but I was never caught. He suspected me due to my rent being deposited the same night and had some people who were doing landscaping examine all my vehicles closely. I know due to seeing them do it through the curtains as they were working. I overheard them call him and say, "There are no damage to any of these vehicles. Spotless." Months later someone let slip that he was on the lookout for any vehicle of a tenant who had damage to their front end. Ha ha ha, it was an act of God. Featured next is picture number 10. I sold the Pokémon book my friend let me borrow in 5th grade. It was around the time of the book fair and my buddy had just gotten a Pokédex encyclopedia book for like $7 and he let me borrow it. I was planning on looking through it all night, tracing my favorite Pokémon. However, when I was waiting for my ride, one of my classmates said he would give me $20 for said book. I didn't believe him, but he pulled out the money and I gave him the book. That Monday I told my friend my little sister flushed it down the toilet. He didn't even seem to care much. A few months later I did end up winning a Game Boy Advanced SP at the end of the year party and gave it to the friend whose book I sold. Since I already had one. I guess I made up for it. Here's picture number 11. I took my grandfather's car for a joyride when I was 15 and scratched the front bumper. So when I was 15 I was living at my grandparents' house. In my culture usually the oldest grandchild lives with the grandparents, and one night I was bored and decided to take my granddad's car for a quick little spin. It was a family-sized sedan, so I underestimated how long the front of the car was and scrapped another car while I was turning on a bend. Lucky it wasn't too much damage and quickly drove the car home. Scarred blankless thinking I'd get a massive beating in the morning, I said nothing and surprisingly no one noticed for probably a week. My grandfather and I went to the shops one day and we saw the scratches on the front bumper. He had the blanks and thought somebody hit it with a trolley. My grandfather passed away last week and the old man would have absolutely whooped the living day out of me, and I laugh at it now, but really I was scared so bad at the time. But now I've got my license and touch wood, I so far haven't been in another accident.